3 months ago, Alex Eala and Iva Jovic stood on the same side of the net in Auckland and dismantled Venus Williams and Elena Svitolina without breaking a sweat. They high-fived between points, whispered tactics during changeovers, and celebrated a tie-break win with the kind of unscripted joy that only comes from genuine friendship. Now, on Sunday at Roland Garros, they walk onto Philippe Chatrier facing each other, and every piece of information they gathered as part becomes ammunition in the hands of an opponent. This is what the WTA Tour does to friendships. It borrows them, then tests them under conditions designed to reveal whether affection can coexist with the desire to end someone's tournament in straight sets. 0-44. The draw didn't ask Alex Eala and Iva Jovic for permission. It simply placed them across the net and left them to sort out what that means. Let's talk about how we got here, because the paths these two have taken since that January afternoon in New Zealand tell you everything about why this first-round match carries weight beyond the obvious. 105. Iva Jovic arrived in 2026 like someone who had spent the off-season building a new version of herself in a lab. She was stronger. She was faster. She moved through the Australian Open draw like a player who had decided, somewhere between September and January, that she was done being charming and ready to be feared. 124. Katie Volinets fell in straight sets. Priscilla Hahn barely landed a punch. Then came Jasmine Paolini, the world number 8, and Jovic beat her in 2 sets. In the 4th round, she demolished Yulia Putintseva in 53 minutes, dropping 1 game. 1 game. She was 18 years old, and she was standing in a Grand Slam quarter-final, the youngest American to reach that stage at the Australian Open since Venus Williams herself did it in 1998. 155. Sabalenka stopped her there, as Sabalenka tends to stop everyone. But Jovic left Melbourne having announced something that the entire tour has been processing ever since. This is not a player on the way up. This is a player who has already arrived and is simply filling in the administrative details. Her clay swing has been more complicated, and this is where the honest analysis begins. 217. Jovic reached the semifinals in Charleston, beating Anna Kalinskaya along the way before falling to Jessica Pegula in 3 sets. Solid. Credible. In Madrid, she won 2 rounds before Leylah Fernandez caught her cold, coming back from a set down to knock her out in the round of 32. And then Rome happened. 238. In Rome, Jovic served for the match against Coco Gauff. She was up 5-3 in the 2nd set, having already pocketed the first, and she had the number 3 seed staring at elimination. Gauff herself admitted her head was halfway to the locker room. But Jovic tightened. The arm got heavy. 257. Gauff reeled off 5 straight games, then ran away with the 3rd set 6-2. That loss, specifically the texture of it, the way it dissolved, is the single most important piece of context for what happens on Sunday. Because here is what that match revealed. Jovic can compete with anyone. 315. She can overwhelm anyone, but she has not yet learned how to finish someone who refuses to die. The closing mechanism, the part of competition that requires you to take the last step when your body is screaming to protect what you already have. She hasn't felt that callous yet. She is 18. 332. It would be bizarre if she had. Now look at Alex Eala's 2026. The trajectory tells a different kind of story. She reached a career high of number 29 in March, the highest ranking any Filipino tennis player has ever achieved. But then Miami happened, a catastrophic 6-0, 6-2 demolition by Karolina Muchova that dropped her ranking points off a cliff. 356. She fell from 32 to 46, lost her seeding protection, and entered the clay season carrying the kind of psychological residue that a 6-love set leaves behind. What IGA did next is the part that matters. She went back to Mallorca. She went back to Tony Nadal, back to the academy courts where the training is designed not for comfort, but for reconstruction. For 20. She emerged for Linz and promptly beat Julia Grabher. In Madrid, she swept past Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova before Elise Mertens ended her run. Then she arrived in Rome and produced 3 matches that, taken together, represent the most sustained clay court performance of her career. She bageled Magdalena Frech in the first set, won that match in 3-4-43. Then she beat Wang Xinyu, the same player who had defeated her in Auckland in straight sets, 6-4, 6-3. And in the third round, she pushed Elena Rybakina, the world number 2, before falling in 2 sets. Losing to Rybakina on clay is not failure. It is curriculum. What mattered was that IGA competed, that she held her ground on a surface that used to make her look like a tourist. Then Strasbourg happened. 5-12. First round. Alexandra Olyanovskaya. IGA won the first set, then lost her grip on the match and went home. That loss is only 6 days old as she walks into Roland Garros. The sting hasn't faded. It sits in the muscles and in the mind, and it either fuels what comes next or poisons it. So, here we are. 5-31. Two players who know each other's games with an intimacy that goes beyond scouting reports. IGA knows exactly how Jovic takes the ball early, how she steps inside the baseline and redirects with her backhand, how she returns serve with an aggression that Pegula herself has compared to her own game. 5-50. Jovic knows that Eala's serve is a vulnerability, that the Filipino second delivery can sit up and beg to be punished, and that Eala's forehand, while capable of extraordinary violence, can leak errors when rallies extend past 6 or 7 shots on clay. They know these things because they have practiced together. They have warmed up together. 6-13. They have stood 3 feet apart and communicated in the shorthand of doubles partnership. And now they must pretend none of that information exists. Or rather, they must stop pretending and use it with full intention. The tactical map for Jovic is straightforward. Pressure the Eala serve. On clay, where the bounce gives you an extra fraction of a second to read spin, Jovic's return game becomes even more dangerous than it is on hard courts. 6-38. If she can consistently put Eala's second serve under pressure, stepping in, taking it on the rise, redirecting it deep into the corners, she can turn every Eala service game into a dogfight. Eala's serve is not a weapon. It is a necessary transaction she must complete before the point begins. 6-57. Jovic wants to make that transaction expensive. On her own serve, Jovic has been working specifically on pace and placement since the off-season. The first serve percentage isn't elite. It hovers around 60%, but when it lands, the free points accumulate. On clay, the reduced pace means she won't overpower Eala with serving alone. 7-19. But she doesn't need to. She needs her serve to do one job: set up the third ball, get the return back, step into the court, and dictate from the baseline. That pattern has been the engine of her entire season. For Eala, the path to victory is narrower, but it exists, and it runs directly through the middle of rallies. 7-41. Here is the thing about Jovic on clay that the Charleston semi and the Goff match exposed. When she cannot finish points quickly, when the rally extends and the geometry starts demanding patience rather than penetration, she can lose the thread. She rushes. She goes for winners from positions that demand one more ball. 7-59. On Parisian clay, which is slower than Madrid, heavier than Rome, more demanding of physical labor per point, that tendency becomes a leak. IGA's chance is to make Jovic work, to absorb the early aggression, extend rallies, and trust that the Rafa Nadal Academy training, all those hours of repetition on clay, all that emphasis on construction and patience and staying one shot away from the winner rather than 2, will hold under competitive pressure. 8-28. If IGA can consistently get the 4th, 5th, 6th ball back, she changes the character of the match from a power contest into a problem-solving exercise. And Jovic, for all her talent, is still learning how to solve problems that don't yield to force. The Roland Garros clay helps IGA here. It is slower than anything they encountered together in Auckland or at Indian Wells. 8-51. The ball sits up more. The court absorbs pace rather than amplifying it. IGA's defensive retrieval, the part of her game that Tony Nadal has been building brick by brick, has more time to operate. And her forehand, when she can wind it up from a stable base rather than being rushed by the incoming ball, carries genuine weight. 9-12. The cross-court pattern she used against Wang Xinyu in Rome, deep, heavy, angled, is exactly the kind of rally construction that can frustrate a player who wants points to end in 3 shots. But let's be honest about the scale of the challenge. Jovic is seeded 17th for a reason. Her 21-10 record this season includes a Grand Slam quarterfinal, a semifinal at a WTA 500, and a match point against the world number 3. Eala is 18-12. 9-41. Those numbers aren't close. The ranking gap, 17-38, reflects a genuine difference in consistency, in the ability to produce high-level tennis week after week rather than in flashes surrounded by early exits. There's also the matter of recent form. Jovic lost to Emma Navarro in Strasbourg's second round. Eala lost to Olenikova in Strasbourg's first round. 10-07. Both players enter Roland Garros carrying a defeat from the same tournament, which at least neutralizes the idea that either has unstoppable momentum. But Jovic's loss came against a player ranked inside the top 30 who had to fight hard to beat her. Eala's came against a player ranked outside the top 100 who is fighting for survival on tour. 10-28. The quality of the losses is not equivalent. And yet, this is where the doubles partnership becomes something more than a biographical footnote. When you have stood next to someone during pressure moments, when you have watched how they handle a tiebreak at 7-7, as Eala and Jovic did against Svitolina and Williams in Auckland, you acquire a kind of knowledge that no amount of video study can replicate. 10-53. Eala has seen Jovic tighten. She has seen the moments when the aggression tips over into recklessness. She knows the tells. But Jovic has seen the same things in reverse. She has watched Eala's body language when the serve isn't landing. She has observed how the Filipino shoulders drop when errors cluster in bunches. 11-12. Doubles partnerships create a mutual transparency that in singles becomes mutual vulnerability. The question for Sunday is not whether Eala can play well enough to challenge Jovic. She obviously can. Rome proved that. The question is whether she can sustain that level for an entire match against a player who, unlike Rybakina, is not content to dictate from a distance. 11-37. Jovic gets involved. She crowds the baseline. She takes time away. She makes you feel her presence inside every rally, and for a player like Iga, whose clay court game is still being assembled, that pressure can accelerate errors the way friction accelerates heat. I think Jovic wins this match. 11-56. I think she wins it in 3 sets, and I think the third set will be decided by a single break. Here is why. Iga will take the first set or make it extraordinarily tight because the nerves of playing a friend, combined with the weight of being seeded and expected to win, will slow Jovic's engine in the opening stages. 12-15. We saw this pattern in Rome against Goff. Jovic was brilliant in the first set, but that was against a player she has no personal relationship with. Against a doubles partner in a Grand Slam first round, with the whole friendship narrative over every point, the emotional terrain is completely different. Iga will compete. 12-35. She will extend rallies. She will make Jovic think rather than simply execute. And for a set, maybe a set and a half, that will be enough. But then the structural advantages will tell. Jovic's return game will begin to extract a toll on Iga's serve. The second serve points will become shorter and more violent. 12-58. Iga will start overhitting her first serve to avoid the second serve, and the percentage will drop. This is the pattern that has repeated throughout Iga's clay season, the serve functioning adequately when she is loose and comfortable, then deteriorating under sustained return pressure. Jovic applies that pressure better than almost anyone in the draw. 13-17. And in the third set, when it matters most, I think Jovic will close. Not because the Goff match proved she can, it proved the opposite. But because that match was 3 weeks ago, and professional athletes at this level metabolize lessons with frightening speed, she will have worked on the closing mechanism. 13-35. She will have replayed those 5 consecutive games she lost. And when she faces another situation where she is serving for a lead, she will have more data to draw on. What could change this? Eala's forehand having one of its transcendent days, the kind where every ball comes off the strings with both weight and accuracy, where she finds angles that pull Jovic off the court despite the American's baseline position. 13:59. If Eala's forehand is operating at that level, the match becomes a coin flip regardless of seedings and rankings. That shot, when it is on, is a top 15 weapon attached to a player outside the top 35. The weather could matter. If it rains and the roof closes, the conditions speed up and favor Jovic's flat ball striking. 14:20. If the sun beats down and the clay dries out, the surface gets faster and again favors Jovic. Eala wants a heavy, humid, slow day, the kind of Parisian afternoon where the air itself seems to resist the ball and reward the player willing to grind. The crowd will lean toward Eala. They always do. 14:41. The French audience loves an underdog, and the Philippine contingent in Paris will make itself heard. But crowd support on Philippe Chatrier is a double-edged instrument. It can lift you into shots you wouldn't normally attempt, and those extra shots either produce magic or produce new ways to lose. 14:59. This match is not a coronation for either player. It is a genuine contest between 2 young women who respect each other, who have helped each other, and who must now temporarily convert that mutual knowledge into competitive advantage. Jovic carries the ranking, the seeding, the form, and the structural superiority on this surface. 15:20. Eala carries the chaos factor, the forehand, the coaching pedigree, and the desperation of a player whose Roland Garros memories consist of a single first-round loss 1 year ago that she has been waiting 12 months to overwrite. Can Eala shock Jovic? The word shock implies an outcome that would defy logic. 15:37. And I don't think it would defy logic. I think it would defy probability. There is a difference. Logic says this match is competitive. Probability says Jovic wins it roughly 65% of the time. That leaves 35% for Eala, which is not a miracle. It is not a shock. It is just the less likely outcome happening, the way less likely outcomes happen in tennis every single day. 16:02. If Eala is going to do it, she needs her serve to hold up, her forehand to fire, and her body to accept the physical cost of extending rallies against someone who wants them to end sooner. She needs the version of herself that beat Wang Xinyu in Rome, composed, physical, tactically clear, rather than the version that lost to Olenikova in Strasbourg, where the whole structure came apart after a promising first set. 16:30. And she needs to look across the net at her friend and decide that friendship is something that exists outside the lines. That for 2 hours, maybe 3, Ivana Jovic is not the person she laughed with in Auckland. She is an obstacle between Alex Eala and the second round of the French Open. If Eala can make that separation cleanly, she has a real chance. 16:51. If she cannot, if the shared history softens her edges even slightly, Jovic will sense it and take the match away from her with the kind of clinical efficiency that got her to number 16 in the world before her 19th birthday. Sunday at Roland Garros. 2 friends, 1 winner. The draw doesn't care about their doubles record.